Hello, my science lovers. Your time is important to us. Your approximate wait time is about 45 seconds. Tonight, we're going to do a new episode of Spirited Science. I've got a packed team here with Atheist Edge. Steve, RJ, Courtney, and TJ. We're going to talk all things Michio Kaku. So strap in and get ready. And thank you again to my patrons, James, Jen, Carl, Patrick, Daniel, Steven, Paula, Carrie, Cersei, Keith, Duke, James, Nana, Andy, Zachary, Tony, Bo, Steven, Sarah, Chris, Graham, Dragnot, Gallus Island, Jennifer, Richard, Doc Pearson, and Neil. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. All right, and we're live. We got our awesome panel here. So we've got, I'm gonna introduce everybody, and I'm gonna give you a second to kind of introduce who you are, what you do. If you do anything on YouTube, please by all means talk about that, and then we'll get started. So Atheist Edge, let's start with you. Tell me about yourself and what you do.
Hi, I'm Jim Hall, just one of the co-hosts of Atheist Edge, and TJ and Courtney are here with me today as well. We are a atheist YouTube channel. We're 2 years old. We just hit 5,000 subscribers yesterday, so we are planning a party for that. We are all about building bridges, finding common ground, and having fun. We're the neutral space where we, believers and non-believers can come together and know that they're not going to get ganged up on, and they're gonna walk away with shaking hands. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited about this episode. Steve, you up next. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Hey, I'm Steve. Most of you already know who I am. I have a YouTube channel. I do science stuff. I'm a licensed professional geologist and government shill for most of my adult life in some form or another. I think that's pretty much it. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet at that. But like I said, I do have a YouTube channel.
Awesome. Do you lick the rocks? Because that's important.
Yes, definitely have to lick the rocks.
You lick the rocks.
You're not supposed to lick the rocks, but I do it. So
you do it? Okay. Just like on TV with the cops that lick the drugs and make certain that it's really cocaine, right?
Well, haven't gotten high from any rocks yet.
Well, yet. The word's yet, right? RJ, hop on here, man. Tell us all about yourself, what you do. This is the second time you've been on Spirited Science. I'm glad to have you back, man.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I'm the old fart in the group here. In my post-midlife crisis, I could say that I'm trying to take down creationism and working on the Troubles in Paradise project. I'm doing Evolution Hour every week on YouTube. I noticed a lot of the patrons that you have are ones that have also patroned my group, so there's a common interest there. I'm the Ask an Atheist person at the local Spokane Faith and Values organization, so I have another hat in that. I've written a novel, and I'm an all-around annoying person.
I like you, RJ. I don't have any issues with you at all. You're always a lot of fun, and you're just like a bottomless well of stuff and things. And I'll be like, hey, do you know about this?
I've been called an angry atheist by some creationists, and so apparently they've decided that I have a virulent nature that I don't smile, I don't have any sense of humor at all. It's just terrible.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let me give Courtney a shout out. Courtney, tell me about yourself, what you do, all the fun things. Go for it.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Howdy.
So I'm Courtney. I'm president of Metroplex Atheists. So I've been president for, I guess, Jim, a year now? More than a year?
Yeah.
Yay.
And I really love it. I founded a secular group at a university that I went to in Maine, so I kind of started there. But yeah, so I do that, and I'm also on Atheist Edge. I'm proud to be part of that. I'm also on Women of Deconversion,
Okay.
which is like something else, and that's really fun. It's got like Shannon Q, Mrs. Snarky, and it's
dance.
really great. It's a really great group of women, and we just kind of get together online and talk about stuff, talk about really interesting topics, and it's all women, so it's really fun. And I turned your drink into more of a martini.
That's awesome. You know, it's all about just taking it and applying it to how you like it. So we'll get into what the drink is here in a bit. Thank you for being here, Courtney. All right,
Thank you
TJ.
for having us.
Oh, it's awesome. I can't wait. So TJ, hop up here and I'm sorry, go ahead.
This last thing, I'm also, my degree is in psychology, and I'm currently doing counseling for young children. So that's kind of the topic kind of framework that I usually take is a psychology standpoint around religiosity.
That's awesome. Well, cheers. All right, TJ, hop in here and tell me about yourself, what you do, what you like. What's up?
I'm just a guy, really. I sometimes, I like to think that I get on the YouTubes every once in a while with these guys, Jim and Courtney, and we talk about stuff, and I interrupt people, and people yell at me, and that's about it.
That's okay. Sometimes you need an interrupter in order to shake things up a bit, right?
Yeah. We get into some really good, fruitful, useful discussions on the show. So I mean, to me, it's all worth it. I mean, I'm an aerospace professional by trade, so I like to think that I'm this kind of jack of all trades, where I know this and that about this and that, and I think my opinion needs to be interjected everywhere. So
that is okay. One of the coolest things I ever got to do, and you might appreciate this, TJ, is I got to go to the NASA social out at Wallops Air Force Base, and I got to see the orbital ATK, the launch. It was a night launch. It was absolutely amazing. I got to see all the labs, all of that.
The space stuff yet, but that sounds super awesome. I'm working on defense contract stuff right now, so
Hush, hush.
I mean, it's a little bit closer to the Earth, but still up there.
That's cool. Well, I'm glad to have you here. So this is awesome. So somebody asked in the chat what we're drinking. We are drinking a tailor-made drink called the Michio. Now, it's inspired by the fact that Michio Kaku lives in California. Okay, so I tried to find fruits that were associated. I thought about maybe doing a fizzy type of drink where I get swirly purple drink that has sparkles in it because they have a thing like that. And I'm like, no, man, no. I want to go something really classic and tasty without it looking weird, and I don't want to have to figure out all the densities of each one of these to make it layered. I'm like, that's just way too much trouble. So it's apricot, and so here's mine. So, and I got mine in a TARDIS glass. And it's apricot brandy, spiced rum, 4 Roses bourbon, ginger beer, ice, and I have a little bit of nectarine on there, and that's what the little garnish is at the top, a little nectarine. It's not too sweet. It has a bit of a kick, so go easy on it. It's a sipper.
It is definitely a sipper. This one right here will last me the whole show.
Well,
and I couldn't find apricot brandy, so I used peach. Otherwise, it's exactly to specs. And even the ginger beer is straight from Texas brewed, so it's right here local.
Awesome.
And I actually put all of the liquor he gave me together and without the ginger beer, so it's just this is just straight.
Straight up. Oh my God.
It'll be a good show.
Watch out for me, guys.
If you don't like ginger beer, a good compliment would be a seltzer water of some sort. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit of seltzer. Well, I can appreciate that, Courtney. So where did I get my degree in mixology? I have a chemistry degree, 2 of them actually. So I didn't get a chance. Some of you guys have never met me before, and this is the first time. So I'll kind of get some of y'all up to speed. So I have a biochemistry undergrad. I've got a biology undergrad. I have a master's of arts in teaching, specialized in secondary science education. And I have a master's in chemistry for analytical chemistry, which is primarily instrumentation and that sort of thing. And do have a publication for a breast cancer test. And this is what I do. This particular show, the whole reason why I have like a drink to go with it, the whole purpose of this is to pull people in and get them interested in science on like a grown-up kind of level. So the people who are on this show, I might sometimes say, okay, is anybody interested in Alan Turing? You want to learn a bit about him and hop on the show and talk about it? Yeah, so it's kind of like an outreach thing I do. People on the show don't necessarily have to be scientists. They just have to enjoy having a beverage and talking science junk, whether it's string theory or the scientists themselves, just to sit around. It's like very casual and laid back, but everybody has their own little topics that they've kind of looked up. So I'm going to let them go for it. So, is it Jim?
Yes.
Do you want me to call you Jim? Or you want me to call you Edge?
Oh, that would, no. See, don't make my head any bigger. Courtney and TJ, they always get on me. I need to stay grounded. No, Jim's fine.
Jim.
I think that's perfect.
Well, I'm an old retired Marine, so I was a cryptolinguist in the Marine Corps. I got 3 associate degrees in Spanish, liberal arts, and criminal justice, so kind of well-rounded like TJ. But
all right.
Oh, okay, so I just thought of something right as you were leading up into Professor Kaku, but you were talking about the importance of pushing, the reason for this show, pushing STEM, getting public awareness. And I remember reading something that Professor Kaku said. He said he was reluctantly drugged into the media because of the 3 Mile Island incident in the 70s, right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's how he got started in front of the camera. And he said, and that's when he realized how important it was. And he even admits now that being a science popularizer, like Carl Sagan was a scientist in his own right, but he's thought of more as a like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's an actual astronomer as well.
Right. He worked on Voyager and all of that. Yeah.
He's. But they're known as popularizers, and Professor Kaku says that is actually more important. Is you can affect way more lives as a popularizer and a science communicator. You can reach more people that way than any individual research could ever do. And I translated that into what we do. We're fighting against the dangers of religion, the harms of religion. And I've written 2 books, and X number of people will read those books. And just yesterday we had a video hit 30,000 views in the first 24 hours.
That's awesome.
No one is ever going to read my book. Not that many people is ever going to read my book in history, but 30,000 people saw our video yesterday.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. That's awesome.
It's popularizing. It's getting it out there. And if we can reach out to just 1 or 2, people and send an email saying, yeah, I'm, that formative age, 10 to, 15 or so. Like you really got me thinking about the dangers of the importance of separation of church and state, for instance. And, I'm going to make that my quest. So it's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. And it's something that I truly enjoy talking about science, and having, done research and been on that end, and having been an educator. I'm like, I have my shows pretty much, like my Saturday shows, I call it Saturday Morning Science. We don't have Saturday morning cartoons anymore, so we have Saturday Morning Science. That's viewer generated topics. They pick what I do and I put it together like hours before I go live. So
it clarifies your own thinking.
Yes.
Because in order to explain it well to somebody else, you have to actually understand it.
The week that relativity won, oh my God. I better go get relativity. Space-time always was elusive to me. So this is kind of leading up to
it's a reminder that the universe is weird.
Yes, it is. So space-time is always kind of elusive to me. So the thing that I like about what I do here, and especially like with this particular show, I get to learn as well. And then I get to relate that to other people. And it's like, okay, well, this is how I learned it. And so there's a lot of modeling there. And so that's where the educator comes in. This is how my brain processed this information. And this is what worked for me. If you don't understand it, here's some other things that you can do. So I kind of go that route. But the Spirited Science show is supposed to primarily be just a bunch of people that are so diverse in backgrounds. And I offer anybody who wants to be on the show, just message me. Let's have a talk, see what scientists you like, and then I incorporate them on that. So it's open to the general public to be able to come on.
And they don't even need to know about that field. The whole point
No.
is, oh gosh, what an interesting question that they can ask and say, what do you mean by that? And you answer the question. And
Right.
that improves things enormously.
Right. And it gets them part of the show and part of the dialogue. And if you don't drink alcohol, you don't have to. But if you
I've
do,
got iced tea, so
you have an
it's
iced
not
tea. That's
required.
great. But it's just another way for, like, say, okay, we can make this fun as well. We'll make a beverage associated just for this. And then, if you want to partake and imbibe, great. If not, that's all right. So space time and all this stuff. Let's start with Jim. Jim, you looked up some cool facts about Michio. So have
Let me
at it,
just-
man. What you got?
Let me just shotgun you guys in the face with just some random facts I pulled up from a week's worth of watching his videos and reading some of stuff about him. But if any of this strikes your fancy, he is a theoretical physicist. We already talked about him reluctantly thrust into the media because of the 3 Mile Island incident, the nuclear incident.
Yes.
He won the National Science Fair in high school. He built a particle accelerator. He had to assemble it on the football field. It drew all the energy and blew the breakers out before they could figure out a workaround for the energy capacity. But that got the attention of a scout that recruited him right out of high school. He went to Los Alamos, started working on the nuclear weapons program. He's a second generation American. His parents were American, but his grandparents came over from Japan. His parents were in a concentration camp in the 40s.
Oh,
Wow.
the internment camps during
Yeah.
the war, yeah.
Oh, man, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Like George Takei.
It was before he was born. His older brother was there in the camp with his parents. He was born later. Actually, his parents met in the internment camp. And let's see, is that enough to chew on? I got more.
Man, keep going. This is all inherently interesting. Yeah.
He's the I did not know this, and I'm really ashamed of myself for not knowing this, but he is the co-founder of string field theory.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that?
Yes. I pulled that up right here.
I
Yeah.
mentioned that pre-show. I thought he was.
It's insane. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see his. Let's see. He like he says he popularizing STEM is more important than research in his opinion for him personally. Let's see. And so I watched a 2-hour-long Q&A, and he was talking about the dangers of artificial general intelligence. So maybe we could start there. He is. Oh yeah, go ahead.
You mind if we talk about the science communication real quick?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Go for it, Courtney.
Because that's the field that I really, really love. It's something I care a lot about, and I do agree that it's more important than the actual research. Yes, the research is absolutely important, but it doesn't help anyone if we don't communicate what we learn to the public effectively,
Right.
and have it actually improve their lives. And so that's something that, there's, especially right now politically, there's such a demonization of science and of knowledge and facts. And so there's it's more important than ever to appreciate the value of that and to very effectively communicate that to the public.
Oh, absolutely. I find it's funny because having given talks, at my own where I'm talking about cancerous exosomes and how to detect them and using like very, what I would consider hard terminology, to be able to take that and break it down and understand that a lot of the general public is going to have around maybe the average reading of a 12 to 14 years old. That's usually how the papers are written. And so you have to be able to kind of take that and break it down into simpler terms. And I do believe that if you can explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. But at the same time, a lot of these scientists, they're so immersed in all of the extremely difficult, what the general population would consider extremely difficult terminology, they kind of forget how to translate that. They don't have like the analogies that they need in order to translate that over to something that an everyday person, I mean, I don't walk in and go, okay guys, so how many of you have actually interacted with a DLS, UV spec, mass spec, and MR? Anybody here know anything about Raman spectroscopy? What about the electromagnetic field? Do you know about redshift and blue shift? No? Okay, great. How am I going to explain this all to you? Yeah. So there's an art to that. There is an art to that.
That's a point Alan Alda makes in his work, because he's been really critical in his post-work after MASH on science education. First with Scientific American, and it's been working with scientists and incoming educators to clarify and improve their way they communicate, not only to the public, but to each other.
Oh, absolutely. I think there is an Alan Alda Foundation, I believe. They have their own thing where they
follow him on Twitter and in everything. Yeah, he's a national treasure.
Yeah, that's something that kind of bugs me about scientific papers, is there's so much that we don't understand about research that comes out because of the way that it's portrayed in the media. It's usually not quite accurate, and so people, the average layman, isn't able to really interpret what's accurate and what isn't about that study. Right. And so unfortunately, the only thing they can do is go to the study themselves, but they can't decode what it's saying without having a degree in it or having a knowledge of that. And so that's really unfortunate. Just with the bachelor's, I found that I had much better access to decode and understand scientific papers, and I had a much more comprehensive understanding of research that would come out. But I knew that I was a small subset of people that could understand that. Plus, having access to the document itself requires a membership to a university or a membership to a journal. Yeah. And so it's just, there's a very closed door in multiple ways to the public understanding this research and actually seeking it out themselves instead of having it be communicated through filters like media and through teaching and stuff.
I'll tell you that in my tip research, I know that we're living in a golden age of accessibility. It has never had so much technical work that is instantly accessible to almost anybody without any money to deal with it. So we have an obligation to deal with that. And it's not just science papers. Anything that has a specialized technical jargon like law also has their little tropes that they make use of. And once you learn how the coding and how the structure works, then it's just another way of presenting information. And no one should be intimidated by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't actually understand is if they graduated from a university, they probably still have alumni access. You can get a lot of that closed source stuff for free.
Yes.
Or you can ask somebody, a buddy. I mean, if RJ couldn't find something and he needed something from me, I would get it for him.
Yeah, fortunately, between Academia EDU and ResearchGate, and then in most of the biological fields, almost all of that technical literature is open access. The rarer
it's becoming more
like paleontology and geology. And oddly enough, a place that's really hard to get to is the historical journals. Right. And so kinds of stuff when you want to research what's the historical literature on Canaanites, an awful lot of that's behind firewalls. So actually that worldview is less accessible now than particle physics or genetics.
Here's another little tip for you guys who may not have access right away. If you go to the authors, see who they are. Usually their emails are pretty public access. You can just email the professors and ask them.
Have email contacts.
You can most of the time if you email one of the authors, they'll just send you the paper. It's you don't have to pay any rental fees. You don't have to do any of that. You can just email one of the authors or all of them and say, could I just have a copy of your paper so I can read it? And they'll be like, yes, here you go.
Another trick to do is to Google the title of the paper. The actual title physically as a text string, because that will pull up where, for example, the author's website or the college website or a course that uses that paper, and you can get the PDFs often that way.
Yes.
You guys, ways that there still are without any cost of money.
There's still some things though that you need to tell your because me and Sarah have done this several times. There's a lot. The University of Wisconsin does not digitize any of their theses. Or their theses.
Their
so
theses.
You have to physically haul your butt to Madison. You like how I said that?
Well, and don't forget your local.
Don't throw theses at us. Come on, Steve.
Yeah,
Don't
I
throw
said
feces
TA.
at us.
If you have a college libraries, I have the advantage. We've got 3 universities here in Spokane, so I have a pile of it.
All right.
But there are cases where technical journals may not have their digitized material back to all the way. So you might find, a 2003 article, I'm screwed. They didn't start putting their stuff online until 2009.
goodness.
And the universities often will have hard copy of things in a way, and obscure journals that may be available there. So, and you can come in as just a general person. You may not be able to check anything out, but you'll be able to photocopy. So don't feel that is a bastion that,
No, you just have to go.
Environment.
What I've had to do a couple of times. I just wish University of Wisconsin, having all the money they do, you think they'd be able to digitize their stuff. I mean, Michigan Tech does it.
It's
and they don't have
laborious work.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff out there now.
So let me... Sorry, go ahead, Courtney, and then I guess we should hop on topic, but go for it. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing about access is it, at least in the psychology field, every single research paper that comes out, there's only going to be so much expertise that's assumed by the reader. So every field is going to be different, and everybody's going to be researching different things. And so when professors look up research from other professors, they're only going to know so much about the subject matter. And so everything is written to inform you and introduce you to the topic that they're talking about. So the only thing you really need is a few, rules about coding and a few rules about the way that they word things. And then you really have access to any research in psychology, because you're not expected to know a whole lot about a specific thing within psychology, because the average professor won't know about a specific thing.
Right.
Unless that's their field. So that's one benefit of that, is that, not everyone's not going to be an expert in most of the things in psychology, even if they're a professor that has a specific field. So that's a good access, is knowing how to
I was just literally today attending a seminar that was open to the public out at Eastern Washington University on ants, and it turned out to be somebody that I had technical papers from him, Sean McKenzie, in PNAS and all of that, and so the chance to actually talk to the person who wrote those technical papers, and he can bring you up to speed on that. Any place that has universities and college and departments and check up on science-oriented clubs. There's a ton of geologists in my area, and they have meetings that they do at a local bar periodically, and they report on the various work. And so there's zillions of different ways you can connect up onto things. It's just amazing. Nobody has an excuse for dumb in the 21st century.
All right. No, true enough. So we got on this tangent because Michio is an avid science communicator. He's all about trying to relate harder concepts to the public, which is essentially it's extremely important, because science fear is real, so is math fear. And so if we're able to say, hey, it's not so bad, this is how we can relate it to your personal life, this is what makes it cool, you might enjoy it, So that's kind of what we're discussing a bit today. So Jim gave us some rundowns on interesting things about Michio. Steve, you want to talk about the time travel thing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he also writes a lot of books, which is good. For the average person to get a hold of information and stuff. I mean, anyone can write a book, but he bases it off his research. And one of the, I forget the title. I think it's here. I got it up. The Future of Humanity, where, he talks about superluminous travel, if that's even possible. And as of right now, we don't think we can go faster than the speed of light. And if that is a true speed limit, we are really hindered by how far we can go out. Although, if the galaxy had a ton of Earth-like planets in it, which I don't think it does, but if it did, if a race really wanted to, they could, even at sublight speeds, they could colonize a galaxy in less than 1 million years. But what he does here is he proposes, faster than light travel, without traveling faster than light. Basically, like Mel, like you said, is you have a problem with space-time. Well, space and time are kind of like the same thing. It's called space-time. It's one word. And time, like space, can be warped because they're the same thing, and that's what gravity does.
But basically, he just explains if you could compress space in front of you really, really fast and expand it behind you really, really fast.
It's like warp bubbles, right? Warp bubbles.
Not really warp bubbles. The warp bubble's a little different.
Okay.
But the basic concept is the same. You're not actually traveling faster than the speed of light. You're warping the space and time around you. But the problem with that is, in Star Trek, is they have to have this structural integrity field or whatever to keep the time dilation factor at bay.
Ooh, I have an Enterprise. Let me get it while you're talking about it. Go for it.
Oh, that's okay.
Here we go. Here's the Enterprise.
But if
right
you're
there.
just compressing space in front of you and expanding it behind you, it's a non-issue. If you're just traveling at, because the relativistic effects, I don't think really kick in until you're at least going 60% the speed of light or 70.
Yeah,
Right.
If I could explain that, you've got a Lorentz contraction curve, which just imagine. Let me see if I can.
It's logarithmic.
It's a curve that starts out very low and then goes whoop like that.
Yeah, it's
and
logarithmic.
that's the curve that applies both to time dilation and to mass and to a distance. So as you climb up towards the speed of light, it's a relatively gradual thing. And then when you're at about 60-70%, then the curve is starting to go up. And that's one of the reasons why you can't accelerate faster than the speed of light, because you're contracting in the direction of motion, time is slowing down, and your inertial mass is increasing. So
That's
to travel at the speed of light, you would have to have all the mass and the energy in the universe. There's not enough to get you to the top because it's an infinitely steep curve. Now, all of these tricks, and they are mathematical tricks, are to figure out how is it possible to maybe kind of sort of produce some very unusual things where the laws break down and there are loopholes in that. They're highly speculative. So the best you could argue is you can play around with a bunch of things, but I wouldn't bet on being able to travel faster than the speed of light.
I wouldn't either. I don't think
it's going to be a mess for trying to colonize the universe because space is really big.
What about you have things like theoretical particles that are proposed, things like tachyons that are supposedly already moving at more than the speed of light?
All again theoretical.
Tachyons are 100% theory.
Richard Feynman said that a positron is an electron that's moving backwards through time.
It's antimatter.
That is all weird stuff.
Nucleotides and muons, but they're massless, so they don't. What RJ is talking about is anything with mass can't possibly even come close to the speed of light because it would require too much energy to propel that mass.
Yeah. I mean,
Unless it could instantaneously accelerate to the speed of light, then it would be okay. But nothing would do that.
But I mean, the energy equation. I mean, the energy equation still.
There are ways that you can theoretically have a variety of things, wormholes and other things, where theoretically some kind of time travel or faster than light travel is not ruled out. But not ruled out doesn't mean you can do it.
It haven't been possible.
Do we need to explain
and that's something
because we've been bandying the term around?
Wait, what was that?
Oh my goodness.
That we mentioned Kaku's role in developing string theory. Should we not explain string theory for any in the audience that are going?
Can I just say one thing?
Little tangles of balls.
All right, let's see, Jim, or is it Jim or Steve?
Well, I was just saying,
Steve.
Yeah, just
okay,
say something
Steve.
real quick.
Sure.
Just a quick point. Something sci-fi forgets a lot that I've noticed, and I would have majored in physics, but I'm too feral, so I went for geology. But time travel is also space travel, and people forget that when they're writing sci-fi. So if you were to travel back in time, you've basically got to have a spaceship. Otherwise, you're going to end up out in the middle of space somewhere.
All the time machines. The DeLorean, when it goes back into time or into the future, is in the same physical space relative to the Earth. And in reality, if it were in an absolute space, the Earth would have moved off and you would have arrived out in the middle of nowhere. So in principle, those stories are assuming the time machine is somehow linked to the gravitational frame. It's kind of an implicit assumption that they haven't really thought through very well.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but if supersymmetry and string theory is correct, a time machine is not even necessary because all the past, present, future all exist at the exact it exists concurrently. There is no going back in time. Time doesn't move in an arrow going one direction. It all exists at the same time. Well, time to be. I can't think of
time is a contentious area in all of advanced physics. And if you think that relativity theory and quantum physics are weird, the moment you ask an advanced particle physicist to start talking about the nature of time, you may as well go and get your drink, because they aren't going to be able to settle this kind of thing. The best description I have, and I can't remember the physicist who said it, is time is nature's way of making sure that everything doesn't happen all at once.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Just to dovetail on there, I think I put a footnote on where you can find information, and what RJ said, there's no excuse for being dumb anymore. I know all of you already know this, but in case some of the viewers right now don't, scholar.google.com is your friend.
Oh,
It's
yes.
a whole new world. You didn't even know about Google. It'll put you right into the academic papers.
Yeah.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
It's a lovely, and it lets you know also how many times it's been cited.
Yep.
So that kind of gives you an idea of, oh, people who think this is really, really important, I should probably read this. So that's always nice.
Okay, so what we're talking about, the Star Trek and harnessing speed of light travel or near speed of light travel, Professor Kaku says we are a type 0 generation, but we are ready to become a type 1. A type 1 civilization can control the weather. It controls all the environment. We have a firm foothold on our planet. We can control it, and all our energy is renewable. We're right there. We're right on the cusp. We have the brain capacity. Well, let me back up. There's 3 parts of the brain, just real quick. There's the reptilian brain in the back, the amygdala. That controls our balance and our hunger and, just our basal, every animal's got that. So even a lizard can understand its position. It knows its position in space. A level 2 is the monkey brain, the middle brain.
Yes.
We have that. We share it with some of the great apes and maybe dolphins. That's understanding your relationship to others, so they can do that as well. And then there's monkeys can understand that on a higher level than any other, non-mammal. Level 3 is the prefrontal cortex, and as far as we know, we're the only species on Earth that has that. We can plan for the future. We are aware of our own mortality. We can think ahead. We can scheme and plot and think about the future and whatnot. So Professor Kaku says we're set up for a level 1 civilization. Would mean total control of the resources, and we've got our planet down. We've got it, and we're colonizing. Level 2 civilization, I think that's what we're kind of talking about now. If we're familiar with the Dyson sphere, you guys know what the Dyson sphere is?
You're controlling it's a big one. In fact, there's an argument to be made that whether or not there's a particular phenomenon that they've seen in space that might actually be a Dyson phenomenon, the remnant of some ancient civilization, and of course physicists are all pushing about it. If I can dump on Kaku right off the bat, controlling the weather. Weather is a nonlinear system. And I've had enormous browbeats about the myth of control here.
I mean, isn't chaos theory essentially based on weather?
You have a problem that you can see the rough structures of weather and climate and have a sense that it's unlikely to be snowing in July in the southern hemisphere at a particular latitude. But the idea that you can manipulate or control the weather assumes that you can deal with everything. And
there's a lot of variables.
Well, it's not merely that it has too many variables. It's nonlinear. It has a thing where you don't. I had a discussion with a fellow that said, well, if you had enough weather stations, they had weather control in Back to the Future too, if you remember. They could turn the rain on and off at particular points. How do you go about doing that? Well, you need to have all these. Imagine you need more weather stations to be able to predict the phenomenon accurately. The problem is it doesn't matter how many you have. You could carpet the planet with weather stations. Each weather station is finite accuracy. And the moment it has a finite accuracy, you've lost control because you have to have infinitely accurate accuracy. You have to have pi to forever in order to be able to work out how the system is functioning. And the moment you try to grab onto that, whoop, it disappears. Which is why I don't think you could ever control the weather in any system.
We're in an open thermodynamic system, so you'd have to account for all the energy and all the factors that are coming in that are affecting that system.
Well, let me offer this to you. Let me offer this to you. That you're thinking predictive. I'm thinking of maybe manipulative. What if we got to a point in the future where we could sub-terraform certain areas of the Earth predictively. Like, let's say springtime in the Northern Hemisphere, we could have stations off the Ivory Coast that could cool everything down to prevent hurricanes in the Atlantic from hitting.
And then the unintended consequences. There's the horrifying problem of something. The reason why we had a polio epidemic in the 1920s is because we cured measles. And it turns out that measles was interfering with the spread of the polio virus, and that was eliminated.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
Nature always has a way. This is the myth of control, and it goes back a long ways. You find the scientism movement in the 1920s to find a certain amount of H.G. Wells has that problem. The idea, and Isaac Asimov flirted with a little bit of that aspect. The idea that if you understand that something is a natural system, that you can learn enough about it that you can manipulate it with confidence. But the problem is we're learning more and more and more that there are so many interactive variables going on, especially if life is involved, but even in climate. The feedback loops, one of the reasons why climatology has been proving so tricky to pull off is to figure out how all these vast interlocking systems where atmosphere and currents going down into the deep ocean and then animals interacting with that and hydrothermal vents. And then you have to take into account
there's just so many variables. That's why I kind of brought up chaos theory. How can you possibly control something that has so many variables? What's up?
And remember Gödel. How do you know about Gödel?
He keeps talking about we could never. Like, but if you look at the question philosophically, just say look at it logically. Look at the concept. Yes, there is a point where if we knew enough variables, like conceptually, we could control things. We could have a level of confidence in controlling things.
So I think Steve had something to jump in with that. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I just want to say, hypothetical. You can. But the thing is, I am the type of person who is observed repeatedly that when we try to control nature, it punches us in the face hard, right back. I don't think our technology is infinite. I don't think it can increase exponentially. Eventually politics and human stupidity gets in the way. I don't think, and technology has to have limits because we're ultimately bound by the physical laws of the universe, whatever those may be. So,
Jim, I think Jim has something to say. So I'm going to say,
I'm a chronic interrupter, so I've learned to do this. Courtney and TJ.
The class is acknowledging Jim, guys. He has the speaking ball. So let him talk.
2 years ago when we started this channel, Courtney and TJ used to just bust my stones. I was so bad at interrupting. So I took you guys on the Sunday drive. I'm going to turn the car around now and head home. I just wanted to put a bow on what I was saying about the civilization. So the level 2 civilizations, we got the Dyson sphere. We're controlling stars. We can maximize the energy that we can glean off the stars, and that would clean up the asteroid belt. That material would be used to build the Dyson sphere. Those are level 2 civilizations. Like I said, Professor Kaku says we're not even at level 1 yet. We're still at level 0. Level 3 civilization is galactic, and just to bring it on around. Back home now, galactic civilization. Of course, we couldn't get to the other side. That's how many miles away? It's 100 million light years to the other side of the galaxy, right?
100,000.
Okay, and so it would be impossible at even close to light speed. But he said level 3 civilizations must exist theoretically, and that is using wormholes, possibly black hole, or dark matter, dark energy, or allowing for the inflation of the universe itself is technically faster than light. So somehow maybe to harness that.
If we're not playing Beastie Boys the entire time, we're going to have issues. That should be part of it. If we get to level 3, we should be blaring the Beastie Boys. Just like the Star Trek reboot, except intergalactic, because that's appropriate.
Mathematics is a really good analog here, because everybody would agree that mathematics is absolutely rigorous. It's totally presumption driven. You don't have a matter of opinion that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or so forth. It's all absolutely rigorous, except this was a big battle that went on between Kurt Gödel and Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell was a believer in an absolute mathematics where they would be able to work all of mathematics out rigorously. And then Gödel comes in and dynamites it with his uncertainty principle, where he was showing that all logical systems contain undecidable propositions. And then I remember from a lecture in math class that was a mind blower way back in the 1970s, how if you, everyone's familiar with the binomial theorem, the minus b plus or minus the square root for an a second order polynomial to find out the process of the root axis. It's a basic one. They have one for a third degree polynomial, ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d equals 0. And it's a bigger formula. There's one for a fourth degree polynomial. It fills a bloody blackboard. There is none for fifth, sixth, seventh, and all above. Once you get to the fifth degree polynomial, it is impossible in principle. God cannot even do a root formula for a fifth degree polynomial. So that means that if there are dynamic systems that are operating with a fifth degree polynomial root of structure, you have lost control on that. It's impossible in principle to be able to isolate except by going through individual examples. And those are some of the things that I'm very much a technological groupie and a lover of advancements in science.
I didn't know that at all, RJ. I couldn't pick that up.
Except there's also the skeptic in me that says, yeah, maybe. And Kaku tends to jump off into the speculative area way too easily.
So I have a joke that was in the chat. Alias Fake Name said, when Gene Roddenberry was asked how the Heisenberg compensators work, he said, very well, thank you.
Science fiction like that is extremely useful. In fact, a Star Trek episode is absolutely beautiful to illustrate so many different things. And one that relates directly to Kaku and the notion of infinite possibilities of multiverse is the one where I think it's Mir or whatever, where there was Kirk slips into another universe where there's a militaristic empire instead of the Federation, but everybody is the same people on the ship, and the Spock has the beard and all of that. I would contend that's impossible. That the odds of a culture deviating that much from its roots would mean that those people wouldn't be there at all. Not that they would be there with slightly different personalities. And that all goes back to the whole notion of contingency and how your own personal life comes about. And in many respects, and I'm much more of a Stephen Jay Gould person who says that if you reran the tape of life, it's going to turn out way different from what it turned out later.
So I have a really quick, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Amanda Cortex. She has Brief Brain Facts. She's really great. She's been on my channel a couple of times. She's a neuroscientist, and so she kind of is chiming in about the evolution of the brain. She's like, we evolved to handle certain environmental pressures, and that has manifested in a variety of behaviors, including the more pathological behaviors, homicide, violence, etc. One particular show that I absolutely loved, and it was one of the, I've seen it so many times, I probably memorized it. It's The Human Universe by Professor Brian Cox. I absolutely love that. He gets into the history of how it is that humans are the only species that we know of to have evolved. You know, we don't have evidence otherwise of any other species doing this, but to have evolved enough to where we've built rocket ships and explored the universe. We don't have evidence of any other species to do that. And they're talking a lot about how the brain, with the position of the Earth, the gravity involved, the climate and environmental pressures, cause the brain about approximately every 40,000 years to double in size nearly. So that just to me is absolutely fascinating. There are so many variables that are involved in regarding the evolution of a species, and how it is that we were the ones that don't throw feces, we throw feces now. So it's like,
well, and by the way, Brian Cox has teamed up with the Monty Python bunch to do science education theater shows.
Oh God, I want to see.
There was one that was shown on PBS just last year, and it's a rip snorter. It's got songs and dance. It's done with Eric Idle.
I have a diet crush on Brian Cox.
I think you can probably find it on YouTube. But anyway, the idea that how much contingency is involved in things. One of the things that pops up to me is about immorality and ethics. The same receptor system that secretes, I think it's dopamine or one of those, that it plays a role in the cuddly, put your arm around you group feeling.
Cuddle them to death.
Thing
you know?
is also producing the push away other.
You want to
Which
cuddle
means
things
you can't
so
have one without
hard,
the
you
other.
know? It's just...
And the idea, another one that's a beautiful science fiction analogy here is Serenity, where where the whole part of the thing was to create a world without sin, and it's not pretty.
Oh, wow. All right,
Yeah,
so...
if you haven't seen Serenity, you need to. It's one of the great science fiction films of the last 20 years.
So I haven't heard from Courtney. I was just about to say, Courtney, what do you think about all this?
I dropped off the chat for a minute. My phone died, and then I came back. But I have also seen this show. I think it might be still on Netflix. It's either called My Inner Fish or Your Inner Fish.
Oh yes, Neil Shubin. That is brilliant.
Yeah, and it you know, for those who don't know, it points out the evolutionary links between us and our ancestral animals, and so it points out like the things that we got from when you know, fish was our ancestor, you know, the things that about our evolution that determine like our hand structure and our, you know, the fact that we have gills in the womb and things like that. It's really, really cool.
Or pharyngeal arches.
Yeah. It's really cool. So there are these things that are still there and obvious evidence of you know, evolutionary.
Great graphics. It was based on his book, which is readily available. You can follow Shubin on Twitter too. And but they did a really beautiful update of it with modern graphics and newer materials. So there was your inner fish and your inner reptile and then your inner ape.
Okay, so Stephen had to drop off really quickly. Little Stevie,
Yeah, Stevie.
the rock licker.
Go and lick some rocks, Stevie.
He had to drop off because his phone died. But thank you, Stephen, for being part of the show, and check out his channel.
As I was told, you have to get one of those things that's the portable battery pack.
Little Stevie, the rock licker. Thank you, Stephen. So sorry, Mel, phone died. All hail the Mew-apocalypse. I thought your cat was talking the whole time. So, you know, that's okay.
Well, we were thinking that was the next stage of animal evolution, the sentient cats.
And thank you for the super chat, Stephen. So, Courtney, what else did you... What?
Maybe he's Professor McGonagall.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I've been told that, you know, speaking of like how people look and stuff, apparently I'm Doc Ock from the new Into the Spider-Verse. So they're like, so many people are like, you gotta see this film, you're in it. So that's probably new cosplay goals right there, man. So TJ, you just sitting back chilling like a villain. What you got to add?
TJ's forte is sociopolitics, geopolitics, current events. So if we were to talk about that, we couldn't keep him away from the mic.
Well, no, really, I actually did, you know, do some studying up on this guy. He's a pretty interesting individual. One of the things through through all the footage of stuff on YouTube that I've watched of the guy and reading stuff online.
And thank you for preparing so diligently, TJ. I really appreciate that. So tell me, what'd you like?
Well, great minds think alike, because Jim has already touched on a lot of the stuff that you know, that kind of stood out in my mind about the dude. One of the things, though, so this being, you know, this is spirited science, and we are, you know, representing Atheist Edge. One of the things, you know, one of the philosophical things that I can't think he kind of rarely ever touches on, but was refreshing to me, was how he likes to bring up on numerous occasions the Arthur C. Clarke quote about any sufficiently advanced technology would appear as no more than divinity,
Indistinguishable.
or would appear as divinity. Yeah. So to me, because a lot of people try to change that quote and say magic, right?
Well, that's
not the quote, though.
The one was magic.
No, the quote was not magic. The quote was, in fact, divinity. And to me, the fact that he brings that up in that way, to me, almost like it makes me wonder if there is something, you know, within him that kind of like feels that, like that kind of a statement or that kind of quote by Clarke is an indictment, sort of organized religion, in the sense that,
well, he was an atheist.
It's all technology, like of some other like race that is possibly visited. Maybe the only reason that, you know, we've seen
God.
God.
Was always fascinated about. He had a series way a long time ago in the 70s or 80s where Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, it may be still available on YouTube. I don't know.
Yeah.
He was fascinated with unsolved mysteries and peculiar things, things that would be relating to psychic phenomenon and Loch Ness Monster and all the rest. He wasn't buying into it, but he said that these could be telling us interesting things that we should study anyway. I'd put my corollary to Clarke's notion that once you reach a certain level of understanding, like we would in a Star Trek world, that we would say that anything that looks like divinity or magic is simply an advanced technology that we haven't done yet.
That's reverse engineering of the statement. But
what's funny to me about that is this concept of like magic. I know what he means by that is some sort of supernatural component. But for me, my dad is a magician, and so I grew up around magic, and I grew up around like, you know, young guys who were all magicians. It's mostly guys. And so for me, like, you know, magic to me is like, you know, skill and practice and tricks that play on, you know, the mind tricks that we all have. And so it's really interesting because it's something that, you know, it still wouldn't be divine to me because it's like, it's something that, you know, there's something about it we don't know, but it doesn't mean that it's not explainable. And so that's how I would interpret that. But definitely, like, I understand what he's saying, that anything that's so advanced, we would just feel is impossible, except maybe the people in this chat and, you know, the 20% of the world would be a little bit more skeptical about the origins of that. So.
No, yeah.
It's no coincidence.
I've always been super fascinated by magicians and stuff because they use our visual acuity a lot to their advantage in the trade, because your eyeballs give your brain information in three very distinct ways, right? One of them is the vision in front of you that you can see, that your eyeball actually translates to your visual cortex. Then you have stuff at the edges where the patterns are filled in slightly by your brain. It's filling in the gaps where you don't have
and they're noticing more than you do consciously.
Right. But and then there's a third way though, that your brain actually whole cloth makes up the image because it doesn't have enough information. That's where optical illusions and stuff come into play, and that's where magicians can mislead and fool people into thinking they're seeing something they're not seeing.
So I'll just add something. Let me just add something really quickly. I did a whole episode of my Saturday morning show, The Science Of, on illusion, and I talk about just this thing. I've done influence, I've done illusion, I've covered a wide array of topics, and illusion was a very cool episode because you get into the fact your bias is really freaking strong, and people don't realize your brain is constantly trying to find patterns in things that aren't there. That's clustering illusion.
It's neuroscience.
So, yeah, it really is.
Of people who are looking at why magic tricks work the way they do, how far back in the evolutionary line are the perceptions that cause those things to happen.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, because some animals, they can find that animals cats and others, well back in the vertebrate line, can tell the difference when something violates expectation, which is the essence of what a magic trick does, where you're pulling the rabbit out of the hat, or suddenly something should be over there but it isn't. So they find out how far down on the evolutionary sequencing and what brain systems are required in order to perceive that.
There's so many videos that show magicians interacting with, you know, chimps, apes, dogs, doing magic tricks, and it's so fun. There's one of my favorites is there's a magician doing a trick with an orangutan, and there's the orangutan's like, what?
And the expressions they make, we would all recognize in what the ape is going like, huh?
It's like, what? And he just does like this.
To see this.
The other thing has to do with our sensory processing, because we like to think that we're watching the movie in the brain because it seems so vivid to us. But as TJ pointed out, you're getting a series of things where it's being assembled in the brain, and the brain has biases. My favorite is the moon illusion, because even when you know the moon is not changing in size, your brain will see it as monstrous when it's rising up on the horizon because of the way our systems run. And then all the ones that are done on colors, what a color seems to be depends on its context. And so a color may be radically different in a different context. You go, wait a minute, that can't be the same color. Oh yeah, let's change the context and show you on that. And it reminds us how we're living in a matrix inside of our own head.
Oh my gosh, I love this conversation. Jim, what you got for us?
I've been writing down some notes. Here comes a shotgun blast based on the last 15 minutes. All right, here we go.
Bring it, Jim.
Courtney, you're gonna love this. So the difference between a level 2 and a level 3 brain. Dogs and cats are level 2. Your dog does not know he's not human, and he does not know that you're not. He thinks that you are another dog. He looks at you like you are just the alpha dog. He has no concept of the difference between him and you. He just thinks you're the alpha. A level 3 brain, monkey brain, a higher order apes, they know that they're not human. That's a little bit of the difference. Next, magic. A Penn and Teller, James Randi, they will often refer to themselves as illusionists instead of magicians because they want to make a clear distinction. Yeah, a clear distinction that this is not magic. You know, the Uri Gellers of the world, there's a lot out there that want you to, the M. Night Shyamalans that want you to think they do have a gift, the mediums, the spirit talkers, all that. So there's a big difference there. Next, we were kind of taking a jump on Professor Kaku just a little bit about just a criticism that he's maybe a little bit hyperbolic, that he speaks a little out of his league sometimes. You got to remember, he's a science educator. He's an entertainer too. He's he's in front of that camera a lot. So he really wants to spice it up. Not that the universe needs any spicing up, but he's really trying to get people enthused. So if he's a little hyperbolic, we kind of have to give that to him.
And also keep in mind, just really quickly,
great responsibility.
Right.
And
I just want to say, keep in mind that a large portion of the U.S. in particular still is very heavily religious. So if he can incorporate a little bit of that acceptance into saying, okay, it's okay that you are religious, but it's also okay that we have science. So maybe that's kind of where the divinity thing kind of plays a role. Continue, Jim.
Okay. In line with that, there's Caesar. He's my boy. I love that guy. We're going to do our 5. We just hit 5,000 views. I think I mentioned it. 5,000 subscribers. So a week from tomorrow, we're going to be over at TJ's house, and we're going to do a thank you show. So look for that on our channel.
I'll probably have the same drink because I like it.
I've still got.
Yay! It's a winner. High five, Courtney.
Hey, yes, hats off to you, Melody. This is a really good drink. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. All right, next. Now, Professor Kaku says when he was young, he was a sci-fi junkie. He just couldn't get enough of it. As he gained in the field, as he gained knowledge, it got less and less for him. And now he's at a point where he can't watch sci-fi anymore. He scoffs at it because his wife he can't stop critiquing it. Oh, that's messed up, and I can relate to him because, I got 4 black belts. I've been a professional fighter. A Marine, marksmanship instructor. So I can't really watch anything, any action movie where there's fighting.
I gotta ask you though, the Daredevil sequences in the Netflix show.
I haven't watched it. Is that the blind superhero?
Yes, the TV show. There's a continuous.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this though.
Okay.
In the fight sequences, are they on the ground?
They are on the ground.
There is a lot of now. If it is, that's how you can tell a good fight sequence if most of it's on the ground.
It's like there's one that's through a hallway and it's a series of bikers. It's all a single shot though, which is extremely impressive. And he's just going through, tearing through them as he's going and down a staircase.
That's a problem because as good as I am, even in my prime when I was fit, 2-on-1 is near impossible.
Yeah.
And if they have a knife, you're not going to win. You are going to die. So there's a lot. Anyway, don't get me off on a tangent, but 2-on-1, no. Ground. The best movie to address if you want to see what real fighting looks like, it's kind of a. Just trust me, you're going to scoff, but it's called Never Back Down. It's kind of a teeny movie. Watch it. Watch Never Back Down.
I may have seen that already.
Oh my God, from a expert unarmed combat point of view, that's the movie to watch. Anyway, so Professor Kaku can't watch sci-fi movies anymore because he critiques them so much. Last thing, he's very vague and nebulous when he's always posed with the question of God. And since we're Atheist Edge, we have to bring it up. And I suspect that because of his donors, his patrons, his funding, on TV and whatever. He tries to walk that middle line. He tries to walk that fence. He's never called himself an atheist, although I know for a fact he's got to be. But he will always say he's agnostic. And I point to the fact that Albert Einstein, of course, is his ultimate hero. And Albert Einstein, whenever he speaks of God, he always goes back to Einstein and the mind of God and this pantheistic, where the universe itself is this, it might not be a divine intelligent agent, but it's got some sort of divine qualities. And he speaks very vague and nebulous. And that's all I've got.
Well, I'll add
a long tradition among physicists of exactly that. Einstein as well. Stephen Hawking would use the God term. I think I'd love to see it banned so that when instead of saying the mind of God, they say the mind of Spurgle, and we're still working on what the Spurgle is. So
okay, so I'll say, having been a person who had to teach evolution in the Bible Belt, and trying to get students, because that was a measured class. I taught biology 1, biology 2. I've taught physical science and chemistry, and so with teaching evolution, one of the things you don't want to do is alienate the people that you're trying to educate. And so I completely understand why Michio would go the route of not saying, okay, I'm gonna say I'm this or whatever, because I knew if I came out and spoke a certain way, and like if I said I'm a Christian or if I'm an atheist, then I've alienated, because I had atheist kids, I had Christian kids, I had Muslim kids, and so I had to completely remove that aspect of who I am from the conversation, because if I said I'm a Christian, then all the atheist kids will be like, oh, I feel so bad for you. Or if I said I'm an atheist, then all the Christian kids will be like, they'll either check out altogether or they'll feel bad and want to pray for me the entire time.
That's a minefield.
So it's like you just have to remove that aspect out altogether so you don't alienate any of the people that you're just, the whole thing. I'm like, look, I don't have a degree in religion. Why would you want me to talk about creationism? Would you bring me your car to fix? I will have fun taking it apart, but I can't say that I can put it back together again because, I don't have a degree in that, but I know about evolution. I know about chemistry, and all I want to do is just give you the information and you come up with your own conclusion. So that's literally how I navigated that. So I completely understand his stance on not calling it. You know what I mean?
That's also really important in the mental health field.
I was asked about this before, and I declined to be surveyed.
Don't mute RJ. I want to hear this.
Very nice.
I actually
see. And this brings me to a good point. Do you think there's an inverse proportionality between common sense and intelligence? Meaning, the more you have of one, the less you have of the other.
No, I think they may not actually be tightly connected at all. That people can be exceedingly bright and yet remarkably astute in some ways and others in not.
I've heard Einstein had the same colored suit for all 7 days. He didn't want to because he didn't know how to match himself.
But I think if somebody like Richard Feynman would be on a beautiful spectrum as somebody who was a well-rounded personality and compulsively interesting and never believed anything twaddly and was always absolutely rigorous. Then you have at other ends of the extreme, probably Newton would be regarded as an oddball in most of his life. If you actually saw him, it may have been gay. That's another side issue.
To be certain.
Well, I was thinking since RJ probably has at least a 160 IQ, but he didn't know to mute himself on that robocall.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I thought I brought it. I forgot that the microphone is over in here.
Well, at least it was a survey and not something questionable like, no, the package should not have anything on it. Thank you.
I wanted to mention to Jim that it's not just scientists that would undergo the feeling of, oh gosh, I can't watch a science fiction movie without going. Historians have exactly the same problem. That I remember how much I loved the Wild Wild West as a kid, as a 12-year-old, and then when I come back to it as an adult, knowing what I do about the history of the 19th century and science and technology, I'm just going.
I went to see Backdraft with a firefighter once, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Any area of expertise is one that people can easily. A tiny foible that I love looking at because I know the history of chess sets is I looked to see whether they have a Staunton chess set in a period prior to 1850. Nope.
Mine, I got triple weight and Staunton pieces, $800 set chessboard with a clock. Are you a rated player, RJ?
No, although I love the history of chess. I'm probably the only person you're going to bump into that has a Courier chess set on his dining room table.
Oh, nice. My brain cannot wrap my head around anything that's not Staunton. It's got to be a certain color squares.
Weird,
I'm a 1563, which is like a...
Alternating squares actually is a relatively recent invention. It was a French invention in the 1200s. So chessboards weren't checkerboards until then. So blame the French.
I am learning about chess tonight. I'm learning about chess tonight. I had absolutely no knowledge of that whatsoever outside of basic playing.
We could do a video on it sometime.
Oh, totally. Okay. We're off on a tangent, though.
Oh,
all right, back to Michio.
I'm like, no idea.
Are we going to hit string theory? Theory?
I was going to say something in response to what Jim was talking about, though.
Have at it, TJ. Have at it.
He did say, I think I can illuminate this a little bit because I did see a Q&A that he recorded with some news outlet. It was a scripted, or not scripted, but a recorded Q&A that he did with a reporter, and he was talking to the reporter about some things about string theory so that he could get it straight for like people who weren't experts in this stuff. And Michio went into a description about how when he was talking about one part of it, how we're living, it's like our universe is like we're living on a bubble, right? We're living on the surface of a bubble that's continuously expanding. And he said, and what he uses the analogy of when he starts talking about the multiverse, how it's incorporated into string theory. And he says that the multiverse is basically that moment when one bubble gets subsumed by another bubble and you create a new bubble, and that's a big bang. Or another time when it's a big bang is when a bubble fissions off into two separate or multiple separate bubbles.
That's the pea brain theory.
Right. And
brains. Right. That when they intersect, then they produce kind of a fizz, and the fizz is what we call a universe.
Exactly, and that's what we call the universe, right? And so he's saying that if you have that, and that's the mechanism by which reality, proliferates itself through the multiverse. That why do you need God? He says this to the interviewer in the Q&A. So I don't know if that's not kind of almost like pretty definitive, like demonstration of like at least what his leanings are.
Good point.
Well, you remember Laplace, this goes way back, even before Einstein, when he worked out the details that there were some fiddly bits that Newton hadn't worked out regarding planetary motions. And by Laplace's time in 1800, they had worked that out much more in his grand book. And Napoleon is supposed to have asked him, well, I don't see any mention of God in here. And Laplace is supposed to have said, we have no need of that hypothesis.
God's not necessary. Yep, that's what Laplace said.
That is the...
Good.
Yeah, oh my goodness. As an aside, RJ, I'm going to need a list of all of your non-swear words that you use because I use that would be
piffle
great.
Sticks. I say that a lot. I'll also go mega piffle, or if I'm talking to a Trumpster, it's MAGA piffle.
MAGA piffle. I like piffle. So, but see,
Melody, are you proud of me? I haven't dropped an F-bomb yet.
You haven't.
I've been trying so hard.
And I noticed, and I thank you for that. That's really good. I'm gonna give you.
The thing about string theory is how it reminds us about layering of things. When I was within my lifetime, even though quantum theory was developed before I came along, it wasn't part of the public consciousness. And so when I was growing up, you were still thinking about little billiard ball atoms where there were nice, neat electrons orbiting around nice, neat nuclei, and it was nice and comfortable, even though in quantum theory, there are waves of probability for the electrons, and everything is much murkier than what you were looking at.
Yeah.
Then in the 60s and 70s, you started hearing about quarks, where now there's things with 1/3, and you have a bunch of them lumped together to make all the particles.
And it's
then
not
string
Star
theory
Trek.
on waveling stringies that are making all of the quark particles that make the billiard ball parts, that make up the atoms, that make up the matter, that make up all the stuff.
Then we got Higgs boson, and that just threw in there.
Yeah,
man,
and I remind people of the fact that it could be turtles all the way down, that underneath the quarks are the strings, and then something else, and then something else, and then something else, and it may never end. That's
the strings are the thing that vibrate when you interact with them, that create the different iterations of subatomic particles.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying if we can break all reality down into continuously ever like expanding subatomic particles, then that only like demonstrates the theory of that.
Oh my goodness.
Theory.
Yeah, and we've got we have these new mysteries of dark matter and dark energy, and that's one of these things that's saying we're missing something big. That I'm sure that in 22nd century physics, we'll be looking back on it. Well, of course they were having trouble working out string theory because they didn't know about blah, 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 that we've now worked out in relation to what's going on with dark matter.
RJ, for a second, it sounded like you said they didn't know about bubble butt. And I was
bubble butt. Yes. Bubble butt.
Like, RJ said they didn't know about bubble butt. And once that came along, that just threw everything out the window.
I wrote a monograph
The little known junk in the trunk theory.
Are we talking about Beyonce or what?
Yeah, no. Got some extra particles going on there.
You remember that old line from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at the restaurant at the end of the universe, where there was one of these rock bands that had made so much money that there was an entire field of economics relating to how they spent their money?
Oh my God! Isn't that like right now? With
I've heard a funny joke. I'm probably going to butcher it, but being a career Marine is a lot of expectation, a lot of anxiety, punctuated by brief bits of just sheer terror and wondering if you're going to make it out alive. Kind of like having sex with Nicki Minaj.
Oh wow! Inappropriate. Oh,
sorry.
It's
enjoy the humor while you can, because eventually no one will know who you just referred to.
Oh, sorry. So I've had to make a second one of these. So
Inappropriate.
I need to probably get like a little soundboard. So Monty and Hannibal, I don't know if you know about them. Hannibal and Monty's. They have a show called The Shit Show. So I do like a weekly spot on their show, and I'll do like a little, and so I'm giving them a little, hey, Hannibal and Monty, what's up? They are hilarious. So they have like all kinds of soundboards. So I probably need to get with Monty, and he actually designed a lot of my original logos. But I was on the show like earlier this week talking about superheroes. But they are hilarious. You guys might want to connect with them.
This is for Courtney and TJ. So ScientistMel, she's kind of new to us, and she's just got on our radar. She's got about 2,500 subs, but she is using OBS. And if you see her promos for her upcoming videos, they are just, the production quality is outrageous. And I told her before we went live that she is definitely going to pull the Cirrus the Skeptic and just blow our doors off in no time. So
Cirrus knows I exist. I think I'm going to be on a show in the coming weeks in a bit.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. But yeah, I see great things for you in the future.
Well, thank you.
You might want to connect with the ACA, the Atheist Community of Austin. You can I don't know where you are, but you can do that by Skype as well.
Okay.
They have these like live call-in shows, and they would love to have. There's shows, a show called Truth Wanted that I got to be on.
Cool.
I have a bachelor's like preliminary, understanding of psychology, which is, sometimes it's more advanced than the average public than I would think it is. But yeah, your interest and your knowledge base, even that you've gained so far, no matter what your background in education is, I guarantee you would be able to really hold your own among like just regular callers that call in and randomly.
Wow.
Our show gets 800 comments a month, and a lot of them say, "Hey, Atheist Edge, are you going to be on such and such show?" And I said, "Well, there's 5 of us. Which one do Courtney, Atheist Edge." So I'm already getting that where Courtney is already become
atheists on the earth.
There's 5 of us here, and the funny part is, like, TJ is a right-leaning libertarian. We have some far left-leaning, so we're all over the political spectrum, which can make for some really, spirited debates. But when a lot of people now are, when they refer to Atheist Edge as a person, they're referring to Courtney. So I've come to grips with her. I've come to grips with her as becoming the face of the show. That's fine.
Oh my goodness!
I'm arguing more so.
You know what?
Well,
You know,
if you
we-
guys want a scientist to pop by on your show, let me know, man. I'll be happy to
nice. You would have to come
Not at
here.
all.
We do a lot of in-person stuff.
Okay. You don't do
yeah.
like over the.
We do like once a month, once every couple weeks, but we're mostly in person. We had Aaron Raw and Mac Dillahunty here last weekend
Oh yeah,
for 13 hours
Yeah,
in our studio, which is crazy.
yeah, we've had all kinds of people on there. We did have who was that? the guy that I really love the most, Jim. Who is that?
You love him so much, and you can't remember his name. That's it.
But in line with what I was saying, you know, if Courtney, TJ, Lance, Chris, you know, Chris is really coming into his own. This guy is just he's like an RJ.
Good, man.
He's a fountain of knowledge, and he's just quick wit. But you know, I'm happy to sit on the sidelines. I'll be production manager. I don't, just like Winston Churchill said, I use all my brains and all I can borrow.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll be out in your area. I don't know. I do like to take a good road trip. So
The Faithless Forum is here in Dallas on 27 April. That'd be a good excuse.
Okay. Yeah, that
We'll
would be.
there.
Huh?
We got
And
keychains, we got bumper stickers. We're going to be doing letting people come up and get in front of the camera and answer our religion trivia questions.
It'll be featuring Cosmic Skeptic all the way from the UK. So that's a big
Wow,
deal.
that's cool.
And
then
Prophet of Zod from Alaska.
Yeah, check that out.
Telltale and Genetically Modified Skeptic, Holy Kool-Aid. Some really, really great. They had one last year, and Jim and I were able to go and do some interviews with Anthony Magnabosco, who does stream technology. That's how we met Dan, and I was able to go on to the Truth Wanted show. It was just really fun. And it's
Sounds
a really,
fun.
really fun piece.
It's a good opportunity to meet other people and get different perspectives, I imagine.
It's such a whirlwind.
Back
Such a
to
whirlwind.
Professor Kaku. RJ said something. Oh, or TJ said something. We were talking about TJ and RJ. That's funny. We were talking about multiverses, and as an atheist, the sticking. I'm often asked, what is the best argument the other side has? And I am very intellectually honest when I answer this, and I say first cause or a fine tuning, and they can go hand in hand. Any multiverse there, the best thing I have to answer that is the weak anthropic principle, which I could get into if you want, but also the multiverse theory. Multiverse theory is not testable. I mean, with the discovery of the Higgs field, that leads us one step closer to maybe legitimizing string theory. As of right now, it's completely theoretical. It's not testable. The multiverse theory doesn't address first cause, though. You can talk about brains and bumping into each other and creating new ones, but it still doesn't address first cause.
Oh, well, but it doesn't give the religionist any better answer on there, because all you're doing is assuming what can an uncaused cause be, and so you can just say the universe is an uncaused cause. It's pure presupposition. We need to have a clearer sense of the range of what we mean by multiverses, and I like to think of it as multiverses versus metaverses. The issue is in a multiverse, imagine you have like those intersecting brains, that there's hyperdimensional things and they are moving around in a hyperdimension, and as they cross one another, they fission off universes. Do the universes all have to have the same physical constants? And so all that we would see would be variations on a universe in which the gravitational constant and the weak nuclear force and all these are identical. Or can they fission off universes that have varying physical properties?
So physics would be different in each bubble.
Could be theoretically different within the multiverse.
Right.
Or is everything within the particular multiverse all the same physics, but there could be different physics in different metaverses?
This is where I say insert existential crisis.
Yeah,
exactly.
And on the fine tuning issue, I envisage a stereo control where you have all the little knobs of all the different fine tuning things, and they're all at certain things. What the physicists do is, let's have a thought experiment. Let's make gravity very different from what it is. Well, according to the way everything connects up together, if you change the gravitational constant too much, you can't make matter in one direction, or matter compulls together and forms black holes instantly. So there are ranges within these things. The problem with the fine-tuning people is they imply that God has control of the stereo set and can make the adjustments. And there's no evidence that that's necessarily the case any more than they can adjust 1 + 1. Do I want it to be 3? Do I want it to be 1.2? Can I do that? No. Well, and that's the whole notion, is why is the universe constructed mathematically? That's the deep underlying issue that they're begging when they're talking about anthropic arguments.
Well, I mean, a why is a concept that human beings are appending to the question. This may be just another case of theology creating an issue where there is none, because they're saying
Aristotle,
the first cause. The answer to that may be indeed that there didn't have to be a cause of anything, that reality simply just always existed.
You've heard of that, well, why is there something rather than nothing? And my answer to that is nothing an option?
But we've also never seen ex nihilo. We've never seen no thing.
And the problem for the religionists is that, especially the Hugh Ross type, I've engaged with him quite a few times, and he runs off like a rabbit on this one. It's that the Bible doesn't describe the Big Bang. It doesn't describe a universe in which it starts out with a singularity billions of years ago, and then eventually planetary systems form, and then eventually you have bacterial life, and then eventually you have multicellular organisms, and then eventually nothing is that in there. And I would get God that in the scriptures gave a better description of things. And remember, in our own species, the gods would have 300,000 years to chit chat, and apparently they didn't.
Well, I also kind of think at the time with the time that the Bible was written, it's almost like, and this is the thing that I've encountered often. People are like, okay, well, the Bible says this. I'm like, well, the Bible is kind of like an idiot's guide to something. At the time that it was written, people didn't really have any kind of knowledge about how things work. They didn't understand earthquakes. They don't have all of the stuff that we have now. So at the time, it could have been very true in their minds because they didn't have any alternate explanation.
Yeah, it worked for them at the time. A lot of it was cobbled together from previous cultures. Right. There's 2 or 3 different traditions, the priestly account and the Yahwist account that are composed in Genesis, that have been mushed together to form the version that we know. Right. Some of it's borrowed from Egyptian cosmology. Mm-hmm. Some of it's borrowed from Babylonians, the order of the heavens, that wacky mistake on day 4 when the sun and the moon and the stars are made after the earth. That's a Babylonian mistake. Oh, hey, Edge has got his hand up.
Edge. I'm so proud of you,
Oh my
Edge.
God, don't. Oh boy, if that catches on, I will be upset. No, because I think he's the bass player for U2, isn't he? So someone already has that name.
Edge. No, he has the in front. Edge.
Beyond the Edge.
You're just Edge. He's the Edge.
Oh,
so you're just Edge.
There we go.
Melody brought up an interesting concept. She said your natural inclination would be, if you're thinking about multiverses, is when a new one forms, it's going to be wildly different values for the 24 different, gravity and the weak nuclear force, and it's going to be, the knobs are going to be turned differently. And that brings me back to the weak anthropic principle, which it's not a very good argument, but it's really all I have to really rationalize this, is that the fact that we're here and the knobs were turned to allow for this sort of carbon-based life means it could happen at least once. It might not happen in other universes. There might be other universes where protons never bind with neutrons and nothing can get going.
That's a real drag.
It's completely true. But if you're talking about it in terms of its relation to multiverse, or as you call it, metaverse, it's all going to be, it can be infinitely regressed outward. You can say, well, yeah, in this instance, when it fissioned off, this universe fissioned off, its laws of physics weren't the same as this other universe. But that was probably only because the forces acting upon it when it was fissioned off. So it had an inherent,
which we can know absolutely nothing because we can't get outside the universe to look.
I know. Yeah, well, here's the step that I like to kind of take. Here's the step that I kind of like to take when I'm communicating different things like this to the general public, especially with people who are creationists or whatever their background is. I do have an episode of Life Outside Earth where I talk about the possibilities of life outside of our planet. What would that look like? What are the possibilities? What is it that we know about the science? And you start there and you go, okay, This is how life formed on our planet. Here are the other possibilities that we know based on chemistry, based on the organisms we have on this planet that can exist in the vacuum of space. Tardigrades, also known as water bears. You have all kinds of different extremophiles. So you can pull in all of these different things that can exist in conditions that we would consider extremely hostile for ourselves, but these things seem to persist, and they can persist for a long period of time. So if you kind of jump from that to say, okay, here's what life could be like on other planets. Now that we understand silicone could be a thing, methane could be a form of fuel, not just sugar. You go and you talk about all the possibilities of how they can go through and what they can do. What would respiration look like on Titan? Stuff like that. Then great. You jump to multiverse and say, okay, now we're going to tweak it this particular way. Then you can get that. But they have to understand that life can evolve in a completely different way in a completely different set of conditions.
You have a great point, but in the way I'm looking at it, these knobs are the different constants for physics. And if the knobs were tweaked even slightly to left or right, I'm playing God's advocate here. But if the knobs were tweaked to the left or right, even you couldn't have tardigrades.
Right.
You couldn't have protons. You couldn't even have suns. Right. I mean, none of that would be possible in probably most other universes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you.
That's probably true.
It's
you know what, guys?
But
I may regret saying this. It may be the drink talking, but but just I don't know. You said something about silicone people. That sounds kind of nice. I don't know why.
Well, there's both ups and downs on silicon. Silicon is similar to carbon in its ability to form bonds, and it has a similar electron shell. The problem with silicon,
it's easier to clean too.
Yeah, the problem with silicon is that it's a little too risky at one end. But once it forms a bond, it's hard to unlock it. And one of the advantages for carbon, and I'm a carbon chauvinist, I suspect that life forms are probably carbon-based because they can form bonds easily, but not too hard, so that they can be pried loose relatively easily. And that's why we can have the metabolism in that we do. Similarly, you could use ammonia in a high-pressure environment instead of water as a base. But water has some interesting little properties. It expands when it freezes, which allows things to be underwater with lakes. And there's a whole bunch of peculiar features of water that make it very, very interesting. And there may not be a coincidence that we're water-based.
Melody is a chemistry degree, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, biochem undergrad.
So I saw something. I saw a video where us being water-based is probably not the norm because water is very caustic, very corrosive. If you think about it, they did an experiment. It was on the beach. They used seawater, and then they used what did you just say, RJ? The ammonia, liquid ammonia, and they put saltine crackers in both of the beakers, and of course, the saltine crackers in the regular water just disintegrated immediately, and in the ammonia, they stay intact. So, I mean, it might be a fluke that we are water carbon based, even though it's so
it has some
corrosive.
You tried the same experiment, you couldn't have performed the experiment where ammonia would be functioning as water might as a moderator because it would be under immense high pressure. So it would be a completely different circumstance. The problem is, of course, we don't have any other life other than us. So everything we look at on Earth is all DNA based with RNA moderators, and everything is entirely speculative. If we can find either fossil life or actual life on Mars, and it's not like what we find on Earth, or if we can find it on the oceans of Europa or some of the other moons in that area, this would be not only Nobel Prize territory, but every scientist will want to know, is it DNA based or not? And can you have a metabolic replicator system that isn't using the stuff that we know? I would be delighted in one way or another, but my suspicion is that the carbon-based system that we have, CHOMPs, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, these are the main elements, and they're abundant, they're easily found, and they have interesting little properties. There's probably no coincidence that life uses that. For the same reason that we are probably DNA-based for a reason, it's the system that works well.
I mean, also the hydrogen bonding properties of water make it particularly useful, especially for a lot of our biomolecules. Our skin and things like that. Our cells are essentially what we call a plasma membrane. Essentially, it's a it's, you're talking about lipids and what's the word? See, this is what happens when I have alcohol. So it's a phospholipid bilayer essentially. So you have on the outside, of your cells, and the reason why skin is an amazing insulator for us is the fact that the majority on the outside, these are all lipids. Lipids don't dissolve in water. So
and they're the hydrophobic end is at one side and the hydrophilic end is on the other, and it naturally forms inside and outside layers because of the fact that it's existing in a water moderator.
And then you take water and you throw a cracker in there. A cracker is mostly sugar molecules. That's what it is. And sugar molecules are actually charged. And so if you notice, something you can do at home, kiddies, get you a cracker and chew on it for a long period of time. You have a natural enzyme in your saliva called amylase. And ASE, if it ends in ASE, that means it's an enzyme. So what it does, it breaks down sugar molecules, amylose. And so it'll break down that cracker, and over a period of time, it'll start to taste sweet. So, because it breaks it down into the individual sugar molecules. So when you put a cracker into a glass of water, what's happening here is water in itself, it exists as both hydrogen ions and OH molecules. So you have, we base our pH system on that. So you have hydrogen ions and you have OH molecules. They're connecting, they're falling apart, they're connecting, they're falling apart. So eventually sugar molecules do have a little bit of polarity. And so they're able to kind of break apart from one another pretty easily and just kind of spread out. And so they still remain intact. You're just basically, when you dissolve a cracker in a glass of water, it just breaks really down.
Promiscuous.
It breaks it down into individual sugar molecules.
Water is terrible for a silicon-based organism. I remember reading in one of the Origin Life analyses way back when they were speculating on this, is that Mars is too wet for a silicon-based organism. That water is just going to turn that thing into silicates.
Holy balls, Melody. The YouTube community is well represented with you. We're glad we have you. Wow. I got two things. Ready?
Sure.
First is when you're talking, RJ was talking about DNA. I suspect, just from my layman's point of view, having done limited research, I suspect there are thousands of different ways to chemically replicate besides DNA, and we're going to find them eventually. Second thing is, what I found is, and I don't do gotcha questions, but whenever I'm confronted with the question, why is there something from nothing? The best, hands down response to that is, tell me when was. Now, this seems like a simple retort, but listen to this. When was there nothing? Now, the key word there is when. When was there nothing? If you say there was something from nothing, there had to have been nothing at some point in time, yeah? Because T equals 0, that's when time was the singularity, yes? Mm-hmm. That all things were still there. All matter existed. It was infinitesimally small, but it was still there. There was no time when there was nothing. So when someone says something from nothing, and Lawrence Krauss's book, The Universe from Nothing, there even empty space that you think is a pure vacuum is teeming with virtual particles and things popping in and out of existence. At the singularity of T equals 0, there was everything. So tell me, believers or skeptics of the Big Bang Theory, when was there nothing?
Yeah, I describe it as, do you have the operating manual for the universe? And on what page does it tell us what the circumstances are to start up universe? Make sure that you initialize conditions 1 and 2. No, we don't know anything about that. All the physics goes tilt. We're trying to work backwards from all of the existing physics down to the other end of it. On the replicator area, DNA is the medium of the information storage, and of course I could just see intelligent designers going information. But nevertheless, it functions in a way like that. Yes. The replicator part relates to a much more complex thing, and it's interesting that the core of the ribosome that actually takes the coding and runs things through to plug amino acids together turns out not to be a protein at all, but an RNA molecule. And this is relating to that thing of that there were layers on layers of things. Now, whether different systems, different nucleic acids forms, there's a PNA and RNA and DNA. There's at least several different forms that can be structured, which theoretically can be used as an information storage thing. DNA has an advantage in that it has fairly stable bonds and yet can pull apart neatly.
Hydrogen bonds. That's why it's nice.
Yeah, but and so it's the one argument now. The current trend in the origin of life research is that RNA, because of its autocatalytic properties, its ability to catalyze, was the initial training wheel system, and DNA came along as a parasite that began to attach itself to the RNA replicators and eventually took over. And that means that when we're talking about the last universal common ancestor, LUCA, everyone should remember that term, LUCA, that's the common ancestor for all existing organisms on Earth. That may have been 100, 200 million years after the initial replicators, that there may have been a hell of a lot of stuff going on before things settle down in the nice cellular thing that we go, oh, archaebacteria.
Yeah. It's funny because the thing, when you're talking about DNA and its structure and everything associated with that, that's its natural conformation. And the fact is that when you have the different nucleotides and how they form, that hydrogen bond, you could put your finger in like a little glass of water and that little drip that just kind of hangs. That's a hydrogen bond. That's water bonding to itself. So that's cohesion. And so when you think about that, that's kind of the same way of how DNA stays together. But it is easily pulled apart, so copies can be made in the form of RNA. Then you have your little ribosomes that read that messenger RNA like, oh, this is the protein that I need to make. Okay, fantastic. The thing that's awesome about protein replication and why it's also a problem when you're dealing with viruses is that you can inject RNA into a cell and those ribosomes are going to read it and they'll be like, I'm going to make all of this. I'm going to make all of the proteins. And so that's why, when
viruses.
The HIV virus, it'll attach itself and it's a retrovirus. So there's other proteins there as well that enter this. So and the ribosomes will read all of this. They're like, yay, RNA, I'm going to make all of this protein. I'm helping the cell. But it's reading viral protein. So to speak, if I really, 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 really wanted to, I could get the GFP RNA, inject it into like my opponents and laser tag, and then we could go into the black light and they'll just glow. And I can just like shoot them all around, because their little cells are going to read that GFP protein, the glow in the dark that you see in jellyfish. Yeah, let's inject that in people. And then I'll go play laser tag and win every time because they'll just be lighting up underneath the black lights. It's the same concept.
We're already lit here.
Got that right. That's interesting stuff. I almost said shit. Oh, what?
You can say that.
Shit. I just said shit.
It's okay. RJ swore. Oh my goodness.
I learned that from my mother's knee.
I'm very, very left-brained. My family calls me Sheldon or Mr. Spock. I really don't. I get no pleasure from art, or entertainment, music, literature.
Oh my goodness!
It's kind of sad in a way, but it's for me it's the way of life. But bioluminescence, I get. I was out. TJ and I have a naval tradition, so we've been out on ships before. In the middle of the Caribbean, when there's no lights out, and you see the bioluminescent algae just covering the sea, the surface of the sea. It's incredible. It's awe-inspiring. The first thing, I know we're getting close to the end, so I'm going to say one more thing about Professor Kaku. I think he might have stolen this from Brian Cox or maybe Brian Greene, but it really just made my mind explode. He said, if you took all the empty space out of every atom in the Empire State Building, how big do you think the Empire State Building would be?
It'd be very, 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 very small.
Oh yeah, the size of a grain of sand.
It would be tiny.
A rice kernel.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Wow.
Does that blow your damn mind?
You want to have another one? I use the analogy to give on the bigger scale, moving into the solar system. If you envisage our solar system as a football field or a soccer pitch, if you prefer, and put a little half-inch marble in the middle, that's the sun. And Pluto is a tiny little disk, and Neptune out at the goalposts. And the nearest star system would be another triple field, the Alpha Centauri group, that would be 280 miles away. In my case, it would be Spokane to Seattle.
Wow.
And that's the closest star.
Okay, and one last thing, and if you will indulge me, Melody, feel free to say no. You can send this right on back, but we need to do a little housekeeping from our show. Sure. We missed a super chat. Faithless Trucker was going to ask Richard Carrier a question, and I thought the next best person to ask, since we have RJ here, can I ask this super chat question from our show?
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. I apologize in advance for taking up your time. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
He asks, how can a perfect being create an imperfect creation? Wouldn't that be a mistake?
Ooh, oh, well, that's one of those, can God make a thing that's too heavy to lift stuff? Those are kind of logical games. All of the notion, that's why I'd like to retire the word God and let's just use Spurgle. So we talk about the Spurgle that may or may not be responsible for creating stuff. And we'd have to ask, are there more than one Spurgle? Is the Spurgle eternal? Does the Spurgle have characteristics? Is it nice? Should it be worshipped? Would you like to play pinochle with it? All the features that you can do to work out what this is. But the versions of God that we have, the Aristotelian super G God that's perfect and omniscient and everything that's better than anything and is the best morality and it's the Donald Trump of deities. That thing evolved over time. The God of the Old Testament was imperfect. It repented of its ways. It didn't know people were building ziggurats, and somebody had to tell it. And it goes, what? They're building mud brick pyramids. Well, there's not going to be any stopping them now unless I confuse their language. You know, the God has evolved. Oh, I got you on the Trump analogy.
Oh, yeah.
I think our Atheist Edge team is a little divided about Trump, so I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah, well, I'll say to Jay, I'm one of those that straddles the two divides, and there's a long tradition. If you've never read Two Cultures and a Second Look by C.P. Snow, get it. It's an important work. It's the idea that there was the separation between the science groupies and the artsy groupies was already in full swing in the 1950s and 60s and hasn't really ended. Whereas there's a long tradition of a fascination of the science for the arts and the arts for the sciences. The science groupies of the 1840s were the artists, Flaubert and all these others who were just knee deep in the new science. And even Frankenstein was written from a bunch of science groupies on drugs, having sex maniac stuff, and then telling ghost stories to each other at the time. And
you know that, Courtney?
The number of scientists who are musicians. Yeah. Einstein could play the violin. Feynman could do the bongos.
I'm actually a singer. I can sing.
And
I play a bit of guitar.
There's not a divide between the two for a lot.
You know,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
so I'm a great pusher.
Mary Shelley
I'm doing
Lord
science
Byron.
work and novel writing at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Mary Shelley, that's a good movie.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, Courtney, Lord Byron, Mary Shelley, all the great poets and authors from that Victorian era, all were a tiny little clique that used to hang out together and just play pool and drink heavy and orgies and all these great works. They knew each other.
Yeah,
Frankenstein was written on a bet.
It was. Yeah, you know. This is number 2 for me, Courtney. So, you know, bottoms up, Buttercup.
Yeah, I'm
a lightweight, man. Melody, this is a very powerful drink, so I'm gonna just stick with one.
You know, here's a random little trivia fact about me. I used to be a DJ. And so my name was DJ Magnum. And so I made DJ Melody.
I think you should use that.
Melody Magnum. So that was my DJ name for a while. So so 5 years in the South. I DJ'd in Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee. And so I would DJ, but the thing is I also have really wicked parties. Here's a little story. One time I had a party. I used to make this 5-liquor lemonade. It was similar to a Long Island iced tea, but you sub Country Time lemonade instead. And so you take the powder, double the amount of powder that you would use for a gallon. It had triple sec, gin, tequila, rum, and vodka.
You could use it for wallpaper paste.
You could not taste the alcohol. You couldn't taste the alcohol.
And so dangerous.
It was very dangerous. So it was a really good drink. And then one day, DJ Paul from 666 Mafia crashed one of my parties, and I didn't know who he was.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So
I don't know why,
I'm familiar. I'm familiar. I know how to hang, guys.
Wow.
That's funny. I used to be a bar back at a sports pub in Maine, and so I was just talking today about making Jello shots in the back and like selling them for $1 or for $2.
Like a lemonade stand.
Oh,
Really more fun though. But I don't know why. Like for some reason, I'm really into like any drink that like requires sipping, like stouts and porters, and like Merlot wine, and like whiskeys and Manhattans and martinis, like things that are just like a little bit but really strong and kind of hit you in the back of the throat. I really love them.
My favorite gin is Oxley gin, and I had it at the Gilbert Scott in London. Scott in London. Somebody said you have to have an Oxley gin and tonic there. And
something about juniper berries that I'm not real fond of.
No.
Well, no, this was just a gin and
guy.
tonic, man. It was just an
Sherry.
Oxley gin and
But then
tonic.
again, I
That's
also
nice.
drink creme de coco straight.
Oh,
You're a freak, RJ.
Oh, well, you just noticed this?
Freak of
That is-
nature.
I eat baker's chocolate straight too. I have had grown men with tattoos freak out at that.
Oh, back to chess. That same clique of authors and poets. Percy Shelley, I believe, won a famous game. Okay, so they played alcoholic chess, which they would clear off the billiard balls off a pool table, and they would take chalk and they would draw a chessboard, and they would use the pawns were all glasses of wine. The queen was a bottle of cognac. The king was a bottle of champagne, and it was all a bottle of for all the pieces.
They were just basic boozers.
Yes, but they would play chess with these bottles and glasses of alcohol. When a piece was taken, when you took a piece, you had to drink it. So Percy Shelley, I think it was him, I could be wrong, maybe Lord Byron, but he famously won by giving up his queen early and making the opponent drink an entire bottle of cognac. And he was so drunk he couldn't
That was in a
continue.
period too when chess began, unfortunately, to be thought of as a guy's game. And in the centuries previous to it, women chess players were very powerful players, and there's a whole long history about all that. But in fact, in the new Fog book, I'm having some scenes involving this Russian countess who is going to America to visit this famous woman chess player up in New England who had just creamed a male master chess player, but they wouldn't let her play games in normal chess tournaments. But she was a chick chess player. Yeah, it was just. Yeah, there's a lost history to that.
I'm having flashbacks to video games when I would completely wipe the floor with people on like fighting games and racer games, and they just and they're like, oh, we're gonna let her play, she's so cute, here's a quarter. Okay, I sit down and just like completely just waste them. I'm like, okay, y'all have a good Thursday.
A lot of scientists, this is one of the sad circumstances. It's now starting to change. But there are an awful lot of women scientists who made a point of never using their first names. They would go by initials so that you wouldn't see them as a woman because they would be prejudiced against, independent of their work.
That is a thing that is real, especially if you look at a lot of studies associated with employers who rate male resumes higher than female resumes, and they're completely equal. So it's a thing. That's a whole different episode, though.
Yes. There was a thing on Marketplace just today about the difficulty that women entrepreneurs have with venture capitalists, that it's an old boys network or a young boys network. Yeah. And if you're pregnant, it's like the kiss of death.
Yeah.
That, they're not going to want to give any money to that pregnant woman. And so that there's a whole, again, subculture evasion. It's starting to change a little bit, but boy, to get to a full egalitarian thing where talent wheels out no matter what.
Yeah, where's Wonder Woman? I want the mascara.
That was a great movie.
One creationist just went batshit crazy over the fact that Captain Marvel was a woman.
Captain Marvel's always been a woman, though, right? In the comic, she was
always a woman.
Yeah,
I think the problem is the character, the actress portraying Captain Marvel is a known like far left ideologue and radical feminist.
Well, can't we just watch the movie for the enjoyment value of it, though? That's what I say.
I could.
I did too.
I won't, but I could.
I will admit this is where TJ and I kind of split a bit, but
this is where all split.
Oh, this is a whole different topic. Yeah, but
we ought to have a whole
TJ and
I about the issue about how much can you separate politics from art. that when I
There should
listen
be
to music written by an anti-Semite, am I not supposed to like the music? And
There should
there's
be
a
nothing
lot-
off limits.
Or what about okay? So then you have to go into the what about the personal behavior of the artist in question? Does that
Look at
come into
Caravaggio, superb
I still
painter,
like-
and juvenile delinquent. He
I
was
still
a
like
dog.
Michael Jackson music. Thriller is one of the
Yeah.
greatest.
Oh yeah,
albums
yeah,
ever.
yeah, yeah. I can totally divorce the bad thing that the artist did from their artwork.
Or a Bill Cosby album
Yeah.
from the 80s.
I will say this,
Yeah.
that it's much, for my case, because I grew up with Bill Cosby's culture, that when you are the one who experienced it, you're more likely to go, whereas you can easily imagine somebody 50 or 100 years from now being able to dispassionately go, Bill Cosby, but this routine is hilarious.
Right.
And being
But
able to divorce
he didn't.
It's still a
he
bit
didn't
fresh.
incorporate
It's
rape
still a
into
bit
his
fresh.
jokes either, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit
Yeah.
fresh.
This is a whole new topic.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
we should save this for another time. I'd love to
Yeah, we're
have you
never
guys
going to run out
back.
of things. We're never going to run out of
Melody.
tangents, Mel.
Melody,
No,
I've got some plugs,
we
though,
never
before
do.
we leave.
You got
We
some
never run out of
plugs.
tangents.
Okay, we'll go down the line and have people plug things, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight.
TJ,
Okay,
Courtney.
I'll bring up Mel. I think I can almost without even talking to anybody on the chat. I think I can officially invite you to Women of Deconversion. I think that would be great.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah.
So we'll get together. Jim can send me your contact and I'll add you to the chat. and we
I'm
can,
close with Mrs. Snarky too, so that's not a that,
Oh,
that, ain't,
that
a,
would be
that ain't a
great.
thing. Jelly beans. So, yeah.
But you need to get a Twitter account, Courtney. I never see you on Twitter.
I don't have a Twitter.
Yeah, so I don't know how to get you in touch with Melody because that's the only way I see her.
Well, you can talk to
I'm on
Mrs.
Twitter.
Snarky. Mrs. Snarky talks to me a lot too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can let her know that you have an
Alright.
interest and she can contact you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yay!
Yay.
So yeah, local community groups with atheism are very, very important. Our group, Metro Bucks Atheists, we do separation of church and state issues. We do protests. We do billboard campaigns. We've also done. We did a protest of Pastor Jeffress, which is fun. But we also do Ask an Atheist events with local churches, and we do speeches of Ask an Atheist events with like universities, things like SMU. We recently did a journalism class presentation for them about how to engage with non-belief in their journalism.
Yeah.
So we do a lot with that, but
Okay.
the main thing for me is creating a community. So support your local atheist groups.
Okay. Cool beans. All right. So let me give TJ. TJ, you got the floor. You have the ball of speaking and acknowledgement. So go for it.
Just like Courtney said, it's important. I think regardless, we as atheists, we take that label, and the reason why that we, I think in a big way prefer to accept a label that we can all identify with is so that, like she said, we can create some kind of community. And I think regardless of our political idea, our political leanings or, whatever things we think about subject A or topic B, we can all at least come together on the one topic that we do agree on, which is whether or not a God exists. And I think that's the thing that we need to find important and really accentuate when we're talking about issues and stuff like that. If we're going to at least talk about the atheist community, I think what will go a long way towards building that better community is if we just all recognize first and foremost that I think we're at least on the right track on at least one subject for sure. And so as long as we can take that and run with it, and we try to do that on the channel, me, Courtney, Lance, Chris, Jim, we all have our different, beliefs and our different stances on different topics, and it makes for very spirited debate sometimes. It's definitely interesting content. Check it out, youtube.com/atheist edge. Like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff, and that's our plug.
That's all right. Okay, let me give it to you, Jim. Edge. Give it to the edge.
Don't you
Have at it.
Boy. If it does get coined, you will be the one that can claim that you started it.
I have so much T-shirt material out of this one episode. You know, we're an ape that throws feces.
Are we gonna be a meme? We're all gonna be a meme.
We're gonna be memes. Oh my gosh, I need to keep up with like more clever things for T-shirts.
Have you been on Non Sequitur show yet?
I have several times, but
okay. I was about to say you are a diamond in the rough if they have not discovered you yet.
Oh yeah, I'm quite familiar, but that's a completely different discussion, and we should probably talk about that privately.
All right. Really? Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. We just put out a video less than 2 days ago called Rando Calrissian. It was Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty just getting blasted in the face with random questions. They pick a number between 1 and 100. We just ask them a question that was predetermined, off the list, and it really went viral. Everyone's asking when part 2 is going to come out. It will be out this Sunday on our channel, Atheist Edge. It'll be out this Sunday at 1300 Central Daylight Time, just for everyone that's wondering. Our 5, was it, Courtney?
That's 1 p.m.
Yes. Oh, sorry. 1 p.m. Central Daylight.
I always have to translate for people because I'm like, oh, they don't know.
You're my civilian translator. Okay. And then our 5,000 subscriber thank you party is going to be on the 23rd, and that's going to be live. And we're just going to we're going to do an open chat. We're just going to send the join link to anybody and everyone that wants to come on and come with us. I'm going to send it to our patrons first. And then if it doesn't fill up to 10 people, then I'm going to send it out to everyone else. That's the same day, the 23rd. That's the same day, Atheist Day, on the steps of the state courthouse in Austin, Texas. Aaron Ra, Thomas Westbrook of Holy Kool-Aid, they're going to be speaking in support of Atheist Day that day. So you could probably Google that and find out what's going on there. Guess who we have on the show on the 29th of March? You're not going to believe this. Frank Turek.
Oh, dear.
Frank Turek. He's going to be in person answering questions, Q&A. It's going to be...
He's bringing all his presuppositional baggage with him.
Oh, we're going to talk about... I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. We're going to talk about everything.
He's on Twitter. I occasionally make some comments on some of his...
We got him here. We got him here on the 29th. And then April 27th, of course, is Faithless Forum. We're going to be there doing some behind-the-scenes interviews, trivia questions, handing out swag, keychains, and bumper stickers. That's on April 27th. That's all I got.
Okay. No worries. That's cool. I'm so glad I've got to have you guys on there. RJ, talk a little bit about what you're doing. I know you have Evolution Hour. You've written books. You're just you just the bomb, dude. You just the bomb.
Everyone who hasn't bought Evolution Slam don't get it. It's the vaporization of creationism on the reptile-mammal transition, and besides, I can use the royalties. And then make it, if you like fiction as well, pick up Paralogs of Phileas Fogg before I get the sequel done. And that one is mystery science fiction, retelling of Around the World in 80 Days. I'm quite delighted and proud of that little work as well. I'll give you a short definition of human beings as opposed to the feces-throwing primate. We're the tool-making species that tell stories. That neither one of those features are unique to us, but it's the combination that's special.
Awesome.
Anyway, I got a website, www.tortukan.wordpress.com, and you can hunt me up on anywhere and subscribe to my channels. I'm very fewer. I think I've got 700 people.
What's the website? Is it Tortukan?
Yeah, Tortucan.
That means turtle in Spanish. I speak Spanish.
Well,
that means turtle.
It's turtle.
Tortuga.
From Latin. Yeah. And I did it because I came up with what I call the Tortukan model of the mind. It was the description of that mind shell notion that you find people who believe things that really aren't true and you can't get them to change their mind. That's because they're literally impervious to evidence. And so I wanted that as an analogy. I was going to call them turtle minds, but I didn't want to insult all the turtles. So I called them Tortukans. And and it's a thing that education can't really wick out of. So if you bump into a Tortukan, I even use the hashtag Tortukan alert on Twitter that we got somebody that you're just boop, it's just bouncing off the mind shell there, and it explains why creationists and others rarely change their mind. If you look at the whole history of it, it's just as true for anti-vaxxers or Holocaust.
We've got quite a few on the show.
Oh yeah.
and flurfers and all the rest, that and they're all I'll give you the short form. 4 main problems that are occurring. One is that they're addicted to secondary sources that they don't fact check. 2, their core fact claimant groups are extremely tiny in number. There's only like 60 fact claimants in all of anti-evolutionism, and everybody else is just a copyist. 3, they really haven't worked out what they think happened. They only have kind of a cartoon version. And of course, they're missing most of the data, remember. And then last but not least, and most critical, what would change their mind? Nothing, because they literally can't conceptualize that. And those are the 4 common traits, independent of content. The content's just veneer. It's that tortucanosity that is intractable. And anyone that flashes that, you just might go, okay. And we don't want Tortucans in political power now, do we?
Oh,
Too
goodness.
late.
Oh my goodness. Well, this has been an absolute delight having you guys here, and I hope to have you back again soon. I have other shows. I have Spirited Science, which is once or twice a month. The last one I had was when I was in New Orleans. I had Monty from Hannibal and Monty show on here, and Andy from Sunday Science, part of the Sci Strike Force, and we talked about the Pharmacy Museum and the very first pharmacist, licensed pharmacist in the U.S., and we took a tour of the museum. We talked about that, and I made a drink called the Pharmacist. It was in New Orleans.
But
So,
the period, when was that?
oh gosh, it was around the 1800s, early 1800s. So that was really cool. So check out that episode. I have a weekly show called This Week in BS, where I bust bad science. It's, BS is bad science. And so this past Thursday, we talked about why you shouldn't drink bleach to cure autism. I had Amanda from Brief Brain Facts, who's a neuroscientist. She was on. I had Rhetoric and Discourse, who works in autism therapy. And I also had the Godless Iowan, who's also on the spectrum. And then next Thursday, for This Week in BS, we are talking about platforming extremism. We're going to go the route of learning. We're going to go the route of neuroscience. I'm trying to get a professor who's a friend of mine who works in journalism and media. Hopefully I can get her on. If not, she sent me some fantastic papers that we can pick apart. So should we platform extremism? Yes or no? How is it that the brain works? How is it that we can shift perspective? What is going to work here?
Oh, man. Is that a coming, or did you already do that one?
That one's going to be next Thursday.
Gosh, I would give a right arm to be on that.
Okay, well, let's have a chat about that.
Right.
Hit me up in my DMs and we can talk about it. So,
and if you want me on, I'm perfectly happy to join in too.
Okay.
Also, an issue of methods and how much.
It's my perspective, having a master's in teaching, and that's a psych degree, because I had to learn pedagogy and that sort of thing about how people learn. And so I'm going the route of, this is how people learn. This is how we model learning. This is the things that we have to do in order to get people to learn. And then I have Amanda Cortex from Brief Brain Facts, who is a neuroscientist, who's going to talk about the different connections in the brain, because that's her jam. So I'm like, girl, let me have you on here. And she's like, right on, sister. And I'm like, we're going to go. So we're going to go on that, and we're going to talk about platforming extremism. What can we do? And no topic should be off limits. I absolutely want to reiterate that, because I have been misrepresented in so many facets. And I'll talk to you later about that Atheist Edge, related to something you said earlier.
I might have overstepped. I didn't know if I was. I have to show you my shirt that I wore just for you.
Science doesn't care what you believe. That's absolutely
on
true.
that bleach drinking thing, was that a subset of the general rule that you shouldn't be drinking bleach?
It started in the 1990s, and you can watch the show for that. They take sodium chloride and they mix a little bit of citric acid with it, and the reaction that occurs, you end up with chlorine dioxide, which is an oxidizing agent that's often found in bleach. So these people are feeding their kids bleach water, 28% bleach water solution, to try to cure autism. So we talked about that and all the problems associated with that. So Amanda's coming back next week on Thursday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, or Central Daylight Time, whatever. And we're going to pick apart how the brain works. How do we learn? What is it when we're exposed to certain topics? What is it that changes our mind, and things like that? So we're going to discuss that a bit. And then on this Saturday, it's always like I'm like I never know what I'm going to do till like the Friday before, usually for my Saturday morning science, for the science of we're talking about autoimmune diseases. So that went out. We've talked in my viewers there. It's all the topics are viewer generated. They vote, and whatever topic wins, I'll wake up on Saturday morning 6 a.m. throw the show together, and then at 10 a.m. I go live. So check it out.
Did you see Courtney's shirt? It's Neil deGrasse Tyson. You all mother effers need science. Yes.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic.
Love this shirt so much. I've also got actions speak louder than prayer. That's fun.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, thank you guys for being here. This has been absolutely amazing. If you like what we do here, like, share, and subscribe. I thank my patrons at the beginning of the episode. I do have a Patreon. Super chats are always welcome. I bear a lot of this cost myself. I do the majority of my stuff myself. I have to thank Peter, also known as Gonna Go For It. He makes all my intros and my screens and stuff for free.
He's damn good. He did mine too.
He's amazing. And then on my This Week in BS, I didn't give them a shout out last time. There's a band in the UK called Versus. My friend Craig is one of the guitar players in it. They did the intro music for This Week in BS to give it a little edgy sound. So thank you, Craig. Thank you, Versus. I'll put a link to them on those shows. And so thank you guys for being here.
Thanks,
this has
Melody.
been amazing. This was so much fun. I hope to have you guys back again soon.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you, TJ, RJ, Courtney, and Jim, also known as Edge.
Oh, boy.
Not the Edge. We're just going to call him Edge. Because he don't need a "the." We know who he is.
Try pronouncing it Edgy.
That sounds too much like Ed Gein, and you don't want that.
The serial killer, yeah. Ooh.
You don't want to be called Ed Gein. No, nobody wants a lamp made out of skin.
I've got the sibling of Stevie right here.
Oh, hi, little guy.
Oh, kitty. Kitties and
Puppers.
puppers.
That's the baby one.
Thanks for having us, Melody. Hope to do it again.
Thank you. So we're going to sign off with our really awesome intro that Peter made. You guys have a fantastic night, and I will see you tomorrow morning for the science of autoimmune diseases. You guys have a great night. Here we go. Bye.
How hard it was not to pick me up on for 2 hours. Wow.
Your hand